Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our discussions of 1970s disaster movies. And today I'd like to focus our attention on a film which is from the latter half of the 70s, 1978. And it's from a filmmaker who is very famous in this particular field or era of cinema, which is the disaster movie genre. He is very famous. He is particularly famous for a number of films that he made perhaps early on in the 70s. And he is none other than Mr. Irwin Allen. And this film that I'm about to speak of is one that was released, as I say, in 1978. He is credited as being both producer and director, and we also have screenplay credited to Sterling Siliphant. This cast is a marvelous one and a very memorable one. It stars, among others, Michael Caine, Catherine Ross, Richard Widmark, Richard Chamberlain, Jose Ferrer, Henry Fonda, Lee Grant, Olivia de Havilland, Ben Johnson, Fred MacMurray, Slim Pickens, Bradford Gilman, and Patty Duke. This is a really interesting cast in a very interesting and memorable work. And this is none other than Irwin Allen's The Swarm. The Swarm refers to the killer bees that are on the loose, on the attack. And they are a particular strain or variety of bee that have a high level of venom, such that it takes only but a few stings to cause death among its victims. So they pose a very significant and scary threat. And so we see these bees and their attack and onslaught in various pockets of the communities that we see portrayed in this film. And along the way, along the progress of the film, we get to meet, for example, Michael Caine's character, who represents the doctor, scientific aspect of the film. And we also meet, for example, the Richard Widmark character, who seems to represent the authority or military aspect of the film. And we see one aspect which is very interesting is their collision or their working together cooperation, because they together, I think, create very interesting tension. That is yet one level of the fabric of the drama, the human drama that is encapsulated in a film like The Swarm. And one of the things about disaster films that we know is it's the disaster and the special effects and the chaos and the carnage that ensues as we see the disaster unfold before our very eyes. In this case, we see the bee attacks and the slow motion. And we can, at least I can imagine in my head as I'm watching the film, the idea of a bee sting. You know, I've been stung by bees a number of times in my own life, so I can understand that feeling of being scared by a bee that is about to sting. And then if you have this multiplied by a sort of factor exponentially, in the context of these killer bees that are attacking these particular communities, then I think it becomes potentially anyway a potential source of engagement vis-a-vis the viewer. So it's something that we can, I think, relate to. It's just then multiplied by a factor of, say, 100 when we see all the bees attack in slow motion. So those, I think, are very effective scenes. And indeed, too, there are a number of other scenes in this that I think are quite effective and that could be said to be very, maybe deadly serious. There is a particular way in which we see children in particular communities and how they are affected by this swarm disaster. And it's quite a chilling way that the film depicts these particular aspects. Also, there is a key character who has to try to figure out some kind of cure or solution to the potential bee venom poison. And this creates a very tense scene involving testing. And I think that's one of the most memorable scenes in the film, and it's very scary, it's very suspenseful. And so those, I think, are examples of where this film could be said to be quite deadly serious when it comes to how it's depicting the disaster onslaught. And this is, I think, very much in keeping with other types of disaster films, because after all, part of the disaster genre that we have seen is the idea of a film having this level of suspense or special effects to carry us through as a kind of a hook, if you will, or as a kind of window into engaging with the film as a type of entertainment. So this is an aspect that I think is part of the Swarm, the film. That being said, another aspect that sometimes comes up with disaster films is the camp. It's the ludicrous. It's the over-the-top silliness of certain sources of the story or the thematic concern or the filmmaking style, etc. And oftentimes that might come in the way that the human drama is depicted. Sometimes these films bring out a soap opera type of dynamic. And for some viewers, that might be seen to be quite campy or over the top. Sometimes it could be the ludicrousness of the situation combined with an element of trying to be serious, and maybe the fit isn't quite right in that way. In other ways, maybe it's the idea of situations that might seem to be serious, but then maybe as they're portrayed, maybe there's a little detail or element that turns them into a type of cheese, a cinematic cheese. And so I think for me, The Swarm has these levels of cheese, let's put it that way. It has a lot of cheese in this. And for example, I think the way in which the venom power of the bee itself is portrayed, sometimes we suddenly get these huge images of giant bees, which are meant to be these illusions or these nightmarish fever dreams, as it were. So that could be said to be maybe quite serious to some, or it could be said to be quite ludicrous to others. So that might be an example. Another example, I think, is sometimes the dialogue is delivered in a way or situations that are sometimes quite funny. Maybe unintentionally so, but sometimes they are quite funny. So I think Michael Caine, for example, you can see him in certain scenes. Sometimes I think the scenes are quite dramatically effective, and then there are other times where you can sense that maybe he is trying his best to deliver dialogue, but maybe when one thinks about it, one realizes the ludicrous nature of the situation. But that becomes a type of camp quality, I think, to the film The Swarm. And I want to emphasize, though, that this type of combination, if you will, of the deadly serious and the campy heights of or the cheesy nature of some of the aspects of disaster films like The Swarm, I don't think are necessarily negative. They could be to some, and that's completely okay, but I'd like to think of it as being various sources of entertainment combined within a single film. Right? Because we can have thrills and shocks and scares, but we can also have fun and laugh with the film, sometimes maybe laugh at the film, but still, laughing is, I think, a very healthy reaction to this type of film, and it's supposed to be fun. The idea of a popcorn flick is the notion that we can go to the movies and hopefully have a good time. And if one of those ways of having a good time is laughing out loud at some of the ludicrous nature of the situations that we see unfold in The Swarm, then I think the film could be said to be doing its job. And for me, anyway, I can identify and rely upon a number of these, say, cheesy moments that can still entertain me quite thoroughly. It reminds me also of, say, like a pizza, pizza. I like pizza, and sometimes I like this type of pizza or that type of pizza, but sometimes, I want to have a pizza with extra cheese. And so The Swarm to me is like a really good slice of pizza with extra cheese on it. And so as a slice of pizza, I think it delivers, and it has a lot of cheese. So in that way, I think it is a very entertaining work indeed. I should say, too, that I do like I do like the film because I still find it very earnest in how it's trying to tell its story, and I do find that while it has these elements of the serious and the ludicrous, I also find its character dynamics to be quite fascinating. Because, for example, the Michael Caine character and the Richard Widmark character, I mentioned that these tend to be characters that are depicted in conflict with each other because they represent different ways to approach the swarm menace. One being the military role, the other being the scientific role. But even in the scientific role, we see the notion of trial and error. Various ideas are put to the test, and they are tested, but they fail. They are tested, but they fail. But they are tested again, but they fail. So it's a trial and error process that we see also played out in various forms of the story. And while this trial and error process is being played out, we see the swarm menace attack various parts of the community, or the threat, and people trying to react and deal with the situations that they have in their personal lives that are also affected. So what I like about this is there is this idea of testing and the scientific method at play. And we also see our heroes fail, which is, I think, a very bold move in a film like The Swarm, especially when we're searching for, when a film like this, I think, is set up really nicely, at least on paper anyway, to have a type of hero character. It's interesting to think about the fact that maybe the main characters that we're following aren't as successful in terms of their endeavors within the film itself. And so I think that adds a certain human dimension to the various characterizations that perhaps helps to maybe balance or temper or otherwise create another source of engagement with regard to how we see the human drama or the soap opera quality of the various dramas that are played out and that we see depicted among the characters contained in the film The Swarm. So this is my way of trying to suggest via this example that the film is, I think, operating on various different tones. And within the tones, I think there is the serious, but also there is the ludicrous. But even that combination could be said to work. As I say, it might not work for all, and maybe this combination might, in relative terms, when compared to, say, some of the early great works by Irwin Allen. I'm, of course, speaking in particular films like The Poseidon Adventure and The Towering Inferno. Those are classic films in the genre. Maybe when compared to films like, say, those, a film like The Swarm might seem to some to be missing the mark, or maybe not reaching those same levels or heights. And that's okay. That's absolutely okay. And maybe for some, this film might be a piece of junk or something, and that's completely okay too. But as I say, sometimes I feel like I want a pizza with extra cheese, and so when I feel that way, that's when I want to watch, say, a film like The Swarm. And in that mood, in that mindset, I can totally have fun with this and have a really, really good time and be entertained with this particular film. Again, this is from Irwin Allen. What a cast this is. It is called The Swarm. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great movies. So thank you so much for your time, as always. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.